Locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I'm Ralph Brogden. What's the greatest invention in the history of the world? I'd like to think that it is the printing press, Gutenberg's printing press, that made it possible for us to create books. What is the next greatest thing? That is the internet, because that has basically allowed anybody with a message, with a story to share, to go online and get their message out to millions of people. That has changed the way publishing works. And here today to discuss the Authorpreneur revolution, which is so awesome, is Kelly McClymer. She is a USA Today best-selling author of 24 novels and short stories. She started Hack Your Muse to coach other writers how to meet the muse and face the blank page fearlessly, but can look like a black page sometimes because you're so depressed. What do I do? Well, she is going to help you to face the blank page fearlessly, to write what you want, how you want, when you want. What an awesome power that is available to you if you only know how to tap into it. Kelly McClymer, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
Thank you very much. I am really excited to be here.
You certainly know what you're talking about. You are the author of 24 novels and short stories. You are going to walk us through the process of how to get over writer's block and the big obstacles that tend to get in the way. Even though we've got all of this opportunity and all of these tools available to us, it can be overwhelming. It can be challenging. So I want to dig into your process. First, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get started writing, and what got you passionate about doing this yourself and teaching other people?
I started writing before I really recognized what I was doing. I wrote in high school, and I co-led my high school newspaper and wrote reviews and stories and articles. And so I've been writing to deadline for a really long time. And when I finally decided that I was going to get published, which is, generally what everybody wants to do, and this was before the internet revolution for publishing, I did my studying and I found out that it involved a lot of finding out what people want and trying to give it to them, which is a huge frustration because you want to write your stories and you want to write your stories your way. And when you first start out as a writer, that's what you do. You sit down, you write the story, it's in your head. There's really not a lot of blocks other than time and skill, and those can be learned. But as you start trying to get into publishing, you learn that people have to like what you're writing. If you mean it to be funny, they have to laugh. And so you have to back up and think about, well, all right, I need to sort of write it from my perspective and then edit it with the perspective of someone who's reading it. And that's where what I call the creative engine can start to get blocked. And my creative engine certainly did get blocked a lot during the years. I'm not as prolific as some of my other writer friends who just kept going. I kept stopping and thinking, what am I doing wrong? This isn't working. I kept getting stopped everywhere. But I kept going and I got published and I went through all of the things, getting the agent, getting the publisher, seeing my books on the bookshelf. And then the indie revolution hit, and I became what I didn't know was an authorpreneur until after the fact, where I put my own books up and I marketed them, and I added in a whole new level of where you can get blocked at the blank page. Because now, if you're not selling, does that mean your book is bad? A whole new way to wreck your confidence and make the muse just refuse to come out and deal with you.
I love the way you put that. So with opportunity comes more obstacles, and one of them being self-doubt and a real blow to your self-confidence. And I really love how you have made the distinction between being an artist, the typical Ernest Hemingway. I'm going to, get me a cabin on the side of the lake or side of the ocean or whatever. I'm going to write the great American novel. And, you don't care about the critics. You don't care about the public. You're going to put that down as your artistic masterpiece. And, that's quite a different approach to writing compared to being an authorpreneur, where you're having to write for an audience and you have to basically give them what they want or give them what they expect, but still maintain your artistic and your creative input, and not cater, I guess, not cater to the masses, but include your audience in a way that may be difficult for writers to learn how to do right off the bat.
I think it's kind of a scalar approach. I have lots and lots of writer friends, and I have lots and lots of writer projects, as for myself, not just for what I watch and read. And one of the things that I think is really important is to know what you want to do with a particular piece of work. And nowadays we can actually do that because we don't have to worry about whether the editor is going to agree with us unless we're going for traditional publishing. So we can actually make that decision ourselves. And I think sometimes we actually get blocked when we don't make that decision. When we're thinking, I want to make money from this book, but it's really a book of the heart, and you're telling a story that's very personal and important to you, and you want to tell it the way that it is in your head. So I think making that distinction before you begin writing really helps you face the blank page with confidence and not get blocked as much. I think the biggest blocks come when you want to make a lot of money and you want to write it your way. There are a few people who can do that, but not most of them. And then the other thing is when you want to write something just to make money, and you're just looking at, fill in this blank and fill in that blank. And that doesn't work for readers usually. And it also doesn't feed your creative soul, and that can block you. So I've known writers on every end and all through the middle of this spectrum. And every time they're blocked, it's for one of those reasons. And so they need to kind of sit back and go, how do I get aligned and write? Because you can write without your muse, but it just doesn't feel as good, and you're not as confident, and it doesn't go smoothly in the way that it goes when you are writing with your muse and you are totally aligned. Your project is aligned with your goals. And, I'm not a writer who's out to make millions of dollars. So I'm not what I would say is super commercial, but I'm also not a writer who only needs to sell my book to the 100 people who need it most. I have great respect for both of those writers. So I can't say that maybe one day I won't suddenly sit down and go, all right, there are 100 people who are going to read this book. I'm going to go write it and try and reach those 100 people because they need it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you need to do. That's the problem now that we've gone past the traditional gatekeepers, is that we have all the responsibility and all the power, and everything that goes wrong is our fault.
I like how you put that. We have all the responsibility, all the power, and therefore we are responsible for all the results, for better or for worse. You are going beyond just writing and you're helping other writers. Tell us a little bit more about who you help. Who is your ideal prospect in the writing and coaching world?
So I've really just begun coaching as a profession. And one of the reasons I was talking to a friend and she said, well, you've been coaching as long as I've known you and we've known each other a long time. You just don't charge for it. And I said, I guess you're right. And then that means that people don't have to listen to me. So I was like, what if I try charging for it? And maybe I could say, hey, you need to listen to me or else you're not going to get it right. And I played with that idea for a little bit and it felt really strange because I have taught writing for a long time, very comfortable with being a teacher. And so I had to sit back and think, what's the difference between being a writing teacher and a writing coach? And I was like, I get it. So for a writing teacher, I'm saying, okay, here's how you can start your book. These are the methods. This is the way that it works. Try it. Let me see. Did that work? Did that not work? Whereas as a coach, I say to you, what is the story you're trying to tell? What writers do you want to be, placed up against in your, when readers are comparing you? How do they start? Where does it feel like your story starts? Is that really where you want to go? It's a whole different client-led activity, which is interesting. And I'm learning because I am coming from the teacher stage. I am learning not to simply insert my opinion and to really leave room for the person that I'm working with to come to their own conclusions. And sometimes if they don't want to, I'll do it.
That's a really useful distinction. As a teacher myself and as a consultant, especially, you want to just jump in. Okay, describe the problem. Okay, and now here's my diagnosis and here's my prescription. Do 1, 2, 3, and your problem will be solved. Or pay me and I'll do 1, 2, 3. Coaching is very different because it's more client led. It's more asking questions than giving answers, and so that's a useful distinction to any of our listeners that are making that transition from consulting or from being in an executive situation where now you're transitioning over into coaching. It's very, very different. And I really appreciate that you are seeing that difference. And one thing you've probably learned is that just because they pay you does not mean that they will take your advice, even when they do pay you. So that's one of the most surprising things that I've learned is nobody pays attention to free advice, but even paid advice, sometimes people are stubborn and they don't follow it.
But I get it. And I really get it. And I think that's where I developed the Hack Your Muse process. Because basically, I'm really trying to send people back into their own subconscious because that's where they're fighting me, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe there's a reason why you don't want to follow this advice. Let's figure out what's going on and see if, you should try it or not try it, or if there's something else. And so, that can be really scary for people, especially writers, because we need to be in that flow state to really create without a struggle, to create something we love that we feel like just came out of us without even any effort. And if we're constantly questioning ourselves and having to look at little minutia, it makes it difficult. But sometimes it's worth it if things aren't working on a big, broad perspective to really sit down and figure out why.
I love that. So when you take one of your coaching clients who's a writer, and you're taking them deeper into themselves to overcome whatever obstacles that they're facing, is there a common problem that you see over and over again with the people that you help?
So I actually work with a couple of different kinds of writers. I work with nonfiction writers and fiction writers, and they seem to have different problems to me. The nonfiction writers tend to have more difficulty figuring out how to put their advice or wisdom into stories. And so I have to really help them say, all right, how did this show up in your life? Was there an interesting way? Did someone say something? Can we turn that into a story? And, and it usually works really well when I ask those questions, but it's not something they think of immediately.
Mm-hmm.
With fiction, it depends a little bit on what they're trying to do and where they're stuck, because some people will get stuck in a technical part. And this is something that all human beings do. And I'm really terrible at this, so I understand it on both sides. It's you want to create something that's perfect from the get-go. So you don't write it until you think it's perfect. And then what you learn is even then, you're still going to have to change it. So it gets frustrating.
Have you been looking over my shoulder, Kelly? Have you been reading my mail? I have looked over the shoulder
of many writers, including myself. This is almost universal. There are a few people, and I love them dearly, who just write and go, no, I don't do that. I'm like, how can you not do that?
Well, I mean, that describes me exactly. I'll sit down and I'll write something, and especially in the early years, I would just write, and that was it. I didn't go back and edit. I didn't go back and analyze it. I didn't ask for feedback. I just put it out there. And I guess the older I get, the more I appreciate the process of iteration and feedback and letting something sit there for a few days, go do something else, and then come back and look at it. And it's like I'm looking at a completely different piece of work compared to when I was in that moment. And I always see something that can be done differently and done better. Is that the way this process should work?
So one of two things. So Stephen King is someone that I paid attention to when I was learning to write. He had books and he had advice out there. And he said he always put a draft aside for 6 weeks, which horrified me back in that time. I was like, how? But he is correct. But the funny thing, when you said that, so I had published a series of historical romances with a traditional publisher. So they went through the editor and everything. And I got the rights back to that and I self-published those. And in the process, I could not stop fiddling and fixing. And now I have friends who have written books that they got the rights back to that were contemporary at the time. And when they do it, they have to update for, to take the BlackBerries out and put the cell phones in and like no one's run into a phone booth anymore, right. Things like that. But I found, and it made me laugh, that it's never done. I still look at the books and I think, oh, well, I could do that. And it's like, no, I'm moving on to a new thing. But the urge and the pull to fix things is still there. And that is one of the downfalls of the Authorpreneur revolution and one of the powers, because if you really want to, you can make the change. But I will say that Stephen King did go back and redo The Stand. Now, I think he mostly just put in things that his editor took out. But at about 20 years after, he did do a new version.
Well, I can see the value of that. And what's so great about the Authorpreneur revolution that we are so privileged to be a part of is, back in the day, you had to have everything just right, because once you went to press, that's it. To change something after you've already gone to print was just not even financially feasible, so you're stuck with whatever mistakes there are.
A warehouse full of books, and they better not. I mean, and of course, I have been doing this a long time. I know of instances where they had the wrong version printed, and that was expensive to fix.
Yeah. But, I mean, just last night I was laying in bed and I was reading through something I had already uploaded to Amazon, and I found 2 mistakes. And you know what? In the old days, I would have freaked out, but this time I just like, note to self, fix these 2 things. And the next day I fixed them and I uploaded them to Amazon, and boom, it's done.
It's so fast. Exactly. And you can count on it. And, I will say, for all that I try very hard to proof the books, always a few errors will sneak in. I like to say it's, maybe just like a technological glitch, but I don't know if that's true or not. But readers will let Amazon know, and then Amazon will let me know. And sometimes it isn't. I like to make up my own words. So sometimes it's not actually an error, but it's fine with me. Yeah. Readers have an outlet because, sometimes readers get really annoyed when they see a typo. Well, now they have an outlet. They can tell the bookstore, and the bookstore will tell the author.
That's pretty interesting.
Can fix it.
Yeah, pretty interesting, the times that we live in. And I get those emails, from Amazon. They call it quality alerts. And it's like, oh, you got a misspelled word on page 501. It's like, really? Then you go and you check it out, and you can fix it or not. But in a way, they're kind of looking over. Yeah, because I'm a perfectionist.
Me too. I hate to get those. I hate them, but I'm glad of them at the same time.
But then I came up with kind of a stock answer when you decline the edit and you have to give an explanation, and I just put author chooses to do it this way or something.
Author prerogative.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, this is really fascinating, but I want to get to the meat and potatoes. How can someone who is writing, who is struggling with that blank page, how can they get to the point where they are meeting the muse and writing what they want, how they want, when they want? Do you have 2 or 3 suggestions to get us moving in the right direction?
Well, so right now, what I'd like to suggest is that every author think about what it is, how the creative engine works, I guess I'll say. So you need 4 things to be able to write smoothly and get really deeply into your muse state. You need motivation, purpose, confidence, and respect. And respect is a little bit of a weird thing. I tend to explain it to people. You have to respect what you're doing. And sometimes, and that's where I was talking about where there's a disconnect sometimes between people who are writing things for money that they don't actually respect. And that can cause creative blocks. If you have those 4 things, you're going to write smoothly. It's like when you're young and you have all of those because you don't know any better. And so I sort of have people go through their creative engine and say, all right, am I in belief? Do I think I can do it? Do I believe that it's going to be worthwhile for me to do it? And then if you have that, you can move on to the action of actually writing. And you're thinking about your purpose of what you're trying to write. Sometimes you're not 100% sure. You know you're writing a mystery, but you don't know whether it's a cozy mystery or a thriller. And that can sort of make you stumble and have a block. And then you just get some clarity on that. And then you move on to the results where you have writing and it either works for what you're trying to do or it doesn't work. And then here's the big one that we were really talking about. You have the reaction phase, and that's where you have a judgment and you have a certain expectation. Yes, this is going to be great. People are going to love it. That doesn't always happen. And then you have the judgment of this is crap writing, which a lot of writers say about their own writing. And then that can stall you again. So all of these things can stall you in your creative engine. So trying to figure out where it is that you're stuck will help you figure out what you need to think. Mind management is the good thing. I know it's the, what do they call it? The hot thing of the day, but I actually think it's true. If you think the right thoughts, you get past your blocks, but you have to know where you're blocked. So if you're blocked because you don't believe that you have a good story to tell, you have to get that one straightened out before you start telling your story. Oh,
that makes a lot of sense.
One more thing. I want to say one more thing,
sure,
which I didn't put in, and I should have made a note to put this in all caps. You learn to write by writing. If you're a writer and you're not writing, you're missing a really important step. It's like trying to cook without actually breaking eggs. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it's all theoretical until you actually sit down and put words to the paper or words to the computer screen, to the word processor, whatever the tool is that you're using, you have to be using it. So even if it is crap writing, or if you think that it is, you've still got to put yourself in that routine. And it's just like working out on the treadmill. You work out on the keyboard on daily for a certain period of time, and you get better and better at your craft. And that gives you lots of options as you're trying to work through these obstacles. You have more dexterity, I guess, is the word that I'm looking for.
Well, your toolbox expands a lot. You know, I mean, I've written in every single point of view. I've even written in second person point of view, which is an interesting one because I was having a discussion with a friend about how everybody hates it. It's a terrible point of view and no one should ever write in it. So of course I had to go write a story in it because I wanted to see what it felt like.
Well, speaking of which, what are you working on right now? You've authored more than 24 novels and short stories, but what's on your agenda right now that you're working on?
So right now I've just geared back up. Talk about writing blocks. So one of the things I've been doing is working through some writing blocks of my own and getting into alignment. I have a huge serialization that I started working on in a fantasy world. And then I had a really huge alignment block of, can I actually do this? And I put it aside until I wrestled through it and I've picked it back up. So my Evertwixt world, my first serialization, Once Upon a Witch's Moon, next episode out next week. It'll be episode 6.
Wow.
People who've been reading episodes 1 through 5 are like, I really wanted that one a long time ago, but it's coming. You really, as writers, sometimes you just get into that creative struggle until you figure it out. You're not going to be happy with what you're doing, and that's just the reality.
Yeah, yeah. Well, congratulations. I mean, it sounds like you were working on a lot of interesting projects, and you're also taking your wisdom and sharing it with others, which is really, really important for lots of reasons, because we all have a voice, we all have a story, and helping people to tell their stories is really important. So if you're listening and this is something that you are interested in finding out more about, you can connect with Kelly McClymer at kellymcclymerbooks.com. You can see all of the things that she's got going on, and you can find out more about Hack Your Muse. Kelly, this has been really motivational and educational for everyone, and I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us. Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
If you want to be a writer, I encourage you to be a writer. If it doesn't work, it's the cheapest thing you can ever try. It's just putting words on paper. If you don't like them, you can burn the paper. So give it a try and don't be afraid. You never know.
Excellent. Words of encouragement and wisdom from Kelly McClymer. She is a USA Today bestselling author of 24 novels and short stories. She started Hack Your Muse to coach other writers how to meet the muse and face the blank page fearlessly, how to write what they want, how they want, when they want, which speaks right to the heart of being a Rebelpreneur author in the Authorpreneur revolution. What a great tagline that is. You can find out more at kellymcclymerbooks.com, and we'll have that link on the Rebelpreneur website so that you can check it out. Kelly, it's been a real pleasure to get to know you. Thanks so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was great, Ralph.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.